Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran military spouse and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Thanks, Enrique. Another best, Bob Dixon, President and Senior Executive Coach at Five Eagle Leadership from Tampa, Florida. Bob, welcome to the show. Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
First, thanks so much for the opportunity. My life is kind of in two chapters, right? I spent the first 27 years of my adult life wearing a military uniform. I went from being a private in a infantry company in the Massachusetts Army National Guard in the late 80s, up through colonel of engineering, where I retired out of the Little Rock district of Corps of Engineers. A lot of people don't know a lot about the Corps of Engineers, but I was responsible for waterways in Arkansas and southern Missouri, including powerhouses, locks and dams, and then all the military construction in my region. I got to do that. It was such a privilege. And I really got to learn a lot about leadership because I only had one other uniformed person in my 2,000 person organization. The rest of them were civilians. So it was a great transition for me to understand the differences between military leadership and leading civilians, because there is a difference. Turns out people are people. So there's a lot of similarities as well, but you got to clean up the language a little bit. So that was my first career. And then I found myself a little bit lost, actually. I didn't know what I was supposed to do when I grew up. I think like a lot of veterans, you say, I've got all of these different skills and I can do a lot of things. I've done a lot of things, but how am I supposed to bring that to market? How am I supposed to explain to somebody that I had $6 billion worth of infrastructure? They're looking at me like, you're not even 50 yet. What are you talking about? It was a struggle for me. And to alleviate that, I started working with a nonprofit here in Tampa called Synapse. And they help the startup community, innovation community across Florida connect. That's hence the name Synapse. And I met a lot of founders. I met a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I was impressed with the bravery, the courage it takes to say, I've got a better idea than what's in the market, and I'm going to bring my idea to market. And I ended up working with a lot of those folks kind of as a mentor. On the leadership side, I didn't know a lot about the business side, but I knew a lot about the leadership side. And eventually I realized I was spending a lot of time doing that. And somebody said, there's a business doing that. It's called Coach. So I put out a shingle and I took a part-time job with a defense contractor for a little while to keep the lights turned on at home. And I started building a business, coaching, teaching, and mentoring leaders. That was the best part about being a senior leader in the military. And it's the best part of being a coach, a business coach, a leadership coach now. So I get to give back to organizations and help young leaders like senior leaders helped me when I was growing up.
That's absolutely wonderful. And I tell you that, yes, you're right. Not too many people know about the Army Corps of Engineers until hurricane season, right? Where
That's for sure.
all things need to be repaired. But thank you for that service and thank you for what you're doing now. So, talking about your new venture, tell us about Five Eagles Leadership.
Like a lot of things, this sort of started off as a bunch of guys sitting around talking over a glass of bourbon, and somehow a cocktail napkin and a pen got together. And it was five retired colonels having this conversation about the difference in the military leadership and what can you bring to the civilian world? How can you translate what you learned over 30 years of military into an organization and help it become better? And we started kind of putting some specifics together, and we figured that there are tons of similarities, but there's also you have to temper that. Like I mentioned before, you got to clean up the language a little bit. But the tenets of leadership haven't changed. People are still people. And so we decided that we were going to try to put together some workshops for senior leaders to talk about how can you be a better strategic leader? How can you use influence instead of direction? Right? How can you be more self-aware as a leader? Right? All of these ideas that we grew up with are sometimes foreign to leaders in the civilian world. They just haven't been taught. They haven't been told, pulled aside and said, hey, have you thought about doing this? And so we put together a workshop in Tampa, and it went great. And what we found though from that was that most people love an event like that, but they really want something that's going to stick. And that's where one-on-one coaching comes in. We do group coaching, of course, but the one-on-one coaching with senior leaders seems to be the most effective because people then can open up, they can be vulnerable. And when you as a coach help people really see themselves and how they're impacting others, it changes the way they look at the world and they look at their business and they look at themselves. That's leadership.
Oh, absolutely. You know, from a napkin and a pen and a glass of bourbon, I guess the title Five Eagles come from five colonels, right?
It absolutely does. The eagle being the symbol for the rank of colonel, and they're not all colonels. Some of them are commanders or captains in the Navy. We do have some lieutenant colonels, and we are looking at senior non-commissioned officers to join us as well because they are also great leaders. Okay,
Well,
okay, let's
Enrique's
talk after
waving that
this.
flag, definitely so. But I love what you guys are doing. So, Bob, share with us and the audience as well entrepreneurship challenges or lessons learned as you dove into that arena.
Yeah, I think there's two big ones. One is falling in love with your product or service that you're developing, right? So an entrepreneur's got this great idea. He pitches it to a couple of his friends. They're like, yeah, that'll work. And they don't spend enough time with the product market fit. They don't see whether or not there is a large enough audience out there to become clients or customers. That is probably the biggest challenge. You've got a great idea that sounds good to you, but it's only a small fraction of people that really want it. So that's, I think, is one of the biggest problems that entrepreneurs face, that founders have to look at themselves and say, let's be honest. And can I get the kinds of feedback from mentors, from people who know the market? And am I willing to accept that feedback? Right? Nobody wants to hear that their great idea ain't going to sell. But sometimes founders need to hear that. I think the second thing that founders have a problem with is they still love their product. They still love their service. They do have good product market fit, but they are so in love with their product or service, they spend all of their time working on it instead of the business. Every business has got marketing and sales to go find some customers. It's got operations to develop and deliver your service. And it's got this admin and finance function. It's got all three of those functions have to work, and they have to work together. And the founders that are so busy making their widget the best widget in the world at the expense of their business, they don't make it because they got an idea, they got a product, but they don't have a business. So I think those are the two biggest challenges entrepreneurs face.
Definitely working on, and then it's one of those challenges that almost all entrepreneurs have to face. Some jump that hurdle real quick and some others flop on it, but very good points. And so as you're developing this into a marketable thing, people are enjoying the workshops, they're loving the one-on-one coaching or group coaching. So what's on the horizon for Five Eagles Leadership?
Well, what I'd really love to expand it nationwide. I'd love to take the workshops on the road. And there are colonels and sergeants major and lieutenant colonels and equivalents from the Navy and Coast Guard. Actually, we have one of those that are willing to spend a day with corporate leaders and business leaders in their market. So I don't have to fly Five Eagles everywhere. I can go and get the local Eagles there that want to give back to their community, that want to help business leaders function at a much higher level. That would be the next step if I could pull that off. I'm a little bit distracted right now because one of my clients, who also happens to be a veteran, had such success with the coaching that his business kind of took off and it started running itself. He hired all the right people, put the right processes in place, and it kind of took off. And he says, well, I'm actually bored because I've got the right people. They're taking care of all of it. So I'm going to start another business and I want you to be a partner. So I am now my second company is a construction company based in Atlanta. And we are all veteran. Everybody who's in the company is a veteran. We are currently in talks with adding to our team military spouses and veterans. So that's really exciting. That's what's kind of holding me back from expanding the Five Eagles brand right now because I'm busy building that other one. But I think Five Eagles helping more people across the country and giving senior military leaders a place where they can give of their wisdom, that the hard-earned wisdom over decades in uniform, To me, that is giving back to my community and then making communities better as business leaders become better.
I love the fact you help build people achieve their mission and also now building infrastructure. So there's a lot of building going on with you, Bob.
Yeah, I'm
Bob,
worried. Yeah, it must be the Corps of Engineers in me, right? I
yeah,
can't help myself.
I think the new nickname Bob the Builder is appropriate in this setting, my man. Well,
I've heard that, and then also as a leadership coach, some people call me a consultant, and they refer to me as the two Bobs from Office Space. So I'm tagged with both of those nomenclatures. I think it's okay. You
it's
got to
all
be able to
good.
laugh at yourself, right?
Amen to that. So hopefully in the near future, once you get back on track for our Five Eagles, you can definitely expand and mobilize a team. But let's now transition into leadership. What do you currently do to sharpen your saw to aid you to thrive in your professional life?
So that's a great question. Leaders who quit learning are becoming stagnant. They're becoming irrelevant, right? It's always changing. We can always continue learning. So I have I have a coach. I believe in coaching. I have a coach. Actually, I've got several coaches. Um, I read incessantly. I probably read 50, 60 books a year. Now I'm cheating because I'm listening to Audible whenever I'm out walking, wherever I'm driving. I'm listening to a book, and I'm taking notes with hands-free note-taking software. Boy, we've come a long way with technology. But I consistently try to have conversations with people who aren't exactly like me. If I talk to a lot of former Corps of Engineer colonels, I have a pretty good idea where they're coming from. But if I talk to business leaders who have a completely different path, they grew up in a different world than I did. They learned their business acumen differently than I did. They learned leadership differently than I did. That makes me better. Because sometimes they'll say stuff and I'm like, no, that's a really good idea. Why didn't I think of that? So talking to people, reading, and then the people you surround yourself with is incredibly important, right? I think there's a lot of leaders that don't have a peer group, and that hurts them. It holds them back because they don't have that sounding board. They don't have people challenging their ideas. So that's what I do. I try to surround myself with people smarter than me, and then try to sound like them.
All right. I'll tell you, those are great points. And you mentioned development. You need to increase that grain, right? That it's for you to get that real good polished point on your sword to be able to use it effectively. Now, talking about using effectively, you mentioned you came in as an infantry and ended up as a colonel. That's a huge swath of the promotions table there that you covered. But what advice did you receive that you would like to pass on to an emerging leader today?
I would say probably the best advice I got was it's not about you, right? It's not about you. And there's a lot of folks that when they become an officer, they're out in front of the formation. They're like, look at me, I'm in front of a formation. I got all these guys behind me. This is great. It ain't about you, right? It's about getting the mission done. It's about enabling those people who are standing behind you and need your guidance and support. And as soon as you get out of their way and spend your time making them successful, the sky's the limit for you. But if you make it about you, at some point they're going to lose faith. All right. They're not going to be their best because you haven't invested in them being their best. So I think I learned that early on. I had an incredible platoon sergeant when I was a brand new pup. I made lots of mistakes. He told me about all of them. Though I would say if I had any wisdom, it was I shut up and listen.
That's some great wisdom indeed. Definitely listening with those two and less with that one, right?
That's
The
right.
mouse. So love that, Bob. Now you talked about your early on your two chapters in life. Now, how about a memorable leadership aha moment in either of those two chapters you had that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So when you're a lieutenant in a battalion structure, there's this senior non-commissioned officer called the sergeant major, and the sergeant major hates lieutenants everywhere. I don't know what's going on there. He just hates lieutenants because lieutenants are always screwing stuff up. Um, I never realized the value of a sergeant major until I became a battalion commander. I probably had some pretty good clues along the way as an executive officer in the battalion, but really truly when I got my own sergeant major, I learned the value. So I always respected and got a lot out of my NCOs, platoon sergeant who taught me standards and that it's not about you. My first sergeant talking about how do you take care of troops, not just, hey, wave your hand, take care of troops. No, how do you take care of troops? And then I had an operations sergeant, Sergeant First Class Baker, who taught me I got to take care of myself as well. I had done some dumb stuff about not taking care of me on a deployment, and he stepped in and probably saved my career by taking a radio microphone out of my hand when I was getting a little too cocky with a field grade officer. But then when I got my sergeant major, I realized what all of these great leaders have been doing for me over my career, right? They were teaching me and they were holding me accountable. I want to be a great leader. And I'm like, well, then be a great leader. And let me tell you where you're not being great right now. And I think the aha moment is every leader needs a sergeant major. Every leader needs to have somebody who knows them well enough to look them in the eye and say, man, you're not wearing any pants today. You are not reflecting your values today. You are not supporting the troops today. You are not achieving your vision today. And unless you have that, you may go throughout the day thinking you got it all together. And when my sergeant major, first ceremony we had, the sergeant major, and I've been a field soldier. I hadn't worn my Class A's in a long time. And on the Class A, the old Class A pants, there are 2 belt loops over here on the right-hand side, right near the front. Why there's 2, I have no idea, but there are, and I missed one. Now I know I'm going to be wearing a jacket, but Sergeant Major caught it. And he stopped me and said, sir, I can't let you go out like that. What are you talking about? The uniform looks great. He goes, except for that, you got to fix that. And I knew right then and there I was going to be able to trust this guy to tell me when I'm screwing up. And it may seem like a little thing, particularly to your civilian audience, but those of you who have served know that building that trust and the willingness to tell a senior leader that they're not everything they think they are is incredible. How business leaders find a sergeant major for themselves, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a trusted person within your organization, maybe it's somebody on your board. I don't know. You got to find one though. That's my aha. It's so important.
And I totally agree. As a senior enlisted and knowing that relationship at the command level as a triad member, that was probably one of the greatest times that everyone got to learn from. The executive officer, the commanding officer, and the command senior enlisted leader have a relationship that is unlike anything that we have ever seen. And yes, definitely the civilian world needs to experience that a little more, and I'm with you on that. So those periods of times more than likely offered plenty of change and challenge. So what are certain strategies that you use with your teams to deal with change and challenge?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is know when you need to change, because some of us can be stubborn, right? And we hear that voice that says, no, stay the course, stay the course. You're on right. You are okay. And if you're not getting objective feedback, you might be heading down a path that's not going to be fruitful for you. Again, my sergeant major is going to tell me, hey, boss, we're driving this organization off a cliff. So you can't fall in love with your plan and your strategy, right? You have to be able to question it, because conditions change. Conditions on the battlefield change. Conditions in the market change. And you have to be able to ask yourself, is what I thought when I came up with this strategy still relevant? And if you can't answer that honestly, you're in trouble. But if you do answer it honestly, then you have to go through a change process. And organizations that have a process for change, they survive change. Those that are going to just wing it because they've been good at winging it their whole lives, those are the ones that are going to struggle. I'm not saying they're not going to make it, because sometimes they're lucky. But if you have a process for this, let's reevaluate the facts on our decision making. Let's ask ourselves where we're making assumptions. Let's get points of view that are different than ours. If I get somebody who looks and acts and thinks just like me, then one of us is redundant. Right? It's probably not me, right? So I need to get a logistician. I need their point of view. I need somebody who grew up culturally different than me to get their point of view. I need somebody who understands marketing in a way that I don't understand and get their point of view. I probably need somebody of a different gender because they think differently than we do, in case we hadn't noticed. So the diversity piece is really about, can they help you solve your tough problems, like dealing with massive change in your business or in your market?
No, absolutely. I love the diversity of thought because that's how we prosper. And, don't be wedded to that idea because some founders carry around that dead cat and they think it's still alive and pet it and they got to let it go. It's dead. Come on now, right?
That's right.
So love everything you're doing, everything you said, Bob. And unfortunately, it's come to an end, but we love to keep going. But folks that are listening, how do they get a hold of you or Five Eagles Leadership?
I'm pretty easy. I have 5eaglesleadership.com. It's the number 5. I think I have the spelled out one as a domain as well, but 5eaglesleadership.com is my website. There's a contact me thing right on there. There's my phone number right on there. People can come directly to me. I don't have a screener between me and somebody who wants to talk. And I'm happy to talk about, where they're at in their business, what they're trying to get to, and how we might work together to help them get there.
Well, outstanding. Well, folks, we'll have that as part of the video and show notes for you to get a hold of Bob and his organization. And if you want to get a hold of us at the Leadership Void Podcast, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. If you like a feature leadership topic here or a special speaker, you'll do it by those means.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Enrique. And also, we have some great sponsors, Triple Nickel, Hero for Kids, and FAVOB. But today is all about Bob, what he's doing with Five Eagles Leadership. He's building yourself, and also he has construction going on. So you got 2 different facets of building going on. But thank you, Bob, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure and much success in your future.
Well, like I said, I love what you guys do, and I'm honored to be a part of it. Thanks a lot.